All right, let's get right into it. We're talking about the future of global money. And honestly, it's a real puzzle. I want to start with a few questions that, at first glance, just don't seem to make any sense. If the US dollar is dying, why does the world still rush into it during every crisis?
If China wants to replace the dollar, why does it still control its own currency? And if gold is a useless relic, why are central banks buying more of it than at any time since Bretton Woods?
So, what do these contradictions tell us? Well, they point to something really important. This isn't some simple cage match where one currency comes out on top. Nope. The entire battlefield, the whole game, is changing.
So, what does it even mean to be a reserve currency? It's not just about having the biggest economy. Far from it. As you can see here, it all starts with one thing: trust. Can the world actually trust you not to devalue your currency or just seize their assets? Everything else, trade, debt, even military power, comes after that. Trust is the absolute foundation.
And this gets us to the absolute heart of what's going on right now. The world isn't really gearing up to replace the dollar. That's not the story. The real story is about countries trying to reduce their dependence on it. Think of it this way. They're not trying to kill the king. They're just quietly building escape routes so they're not trapped in the castle if things go bad. This quote just nails it perfectly. It's a subtle rewiring of global finance that's happening under the surface. It's not a big declaration of war. It's all about creating options. Okay, so with that in mind, let's get real about the dollar. You hear all these headlines about its imminent collapse, but its power is, well, it's incredibly sticky. The data actually tells a pretty surprising story. So check this out. It's kind of wild. The dollar's role in global trading isn't just holding steady, it's actually growing. In 2022, it was on one side of over 88% of all foreign exchange trades, and it's projected to climb even higher. It's like the dollar is the essential plumbing of the whole global financial system. It's just the fastest, most efficient bridge between any two other currencies. And this right here, this shows you just how massive that disconnect is. The US economy, it's about a quarter of the world's GDP. But the US dollar is involved in nearly 90% of currency trades. That is what you call structural power. It punches way, way above its economic weight class. So what's the secret? Well, this quote really gets to the heart of it. The dollar isn't dominant because it's loved. It's dominant because everything else breaks first. Think about it. When a crisis hits, investors aren't running to the dollar because they love American policy. They're running away from everything else. US Treasury bonds are the deepest, most liquid market on the planet. They are the only fire exit big enough for everyone to stampede to at once. So that really brings up a big question for you. Do you think the dollar holds on because it's genuinely strong, or is it just that there's no other real alternative out there? Let me know what you think down in the comments.
All right, now let's look at the would-be challengers, China's yuan and good old gold. And they couldn't be more different in their approach to chipping away at the dollar's throne. First up, China. And it is absolutely crucial to understand their goal here. China doesn't really want the yuan to be a global reserve currency, something that foreigners hold on to for savings. What they want is for it to be a settlement currency, the money used to price and pay for trade. And believe me, those are two totally different ballgames. A true reserve currency means you have to give up a lot of control, and that's something Beijing is just not willing to do. And this is exactly why the yuan has a built-in ceiling. For a currency to be a true global reserve, money has to be able to flow in and out freely. But China's greatest strength, its tight control over its system, is also its biggest weakness here. Because of all those capital controls, the yuan's share of global reserves is totally stalled out at just over 2%, even with China's massive economy.
Okay, now let's turn to gold, and this chart, wow, it's just stunning. What you're seeing is that right after the US and its allies froze Russia's dollar reserves in 2022, central banks around the world went on an absolutely historic gold buying spree. That single event was a wake-up call. It proved that any country's reserves held in another nation's currency could be turned into a weapon overnight.
And that brings us to this critical insight. Gold isn't replacing the dollar, it's replacing trust. In a world where trust between major powers is basically collapsing, gold is the only reserve asset that's politically neutral. You can't sanction it, you can't freeze it, and you can't just digitally delete it. It's outside the system. By the way, if you're getting value out of this kind of clear, no-nonsense global breakdown, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. It really helps. So in a world that's breaking apart like this, how does a major power play its cards?
Well, India gives us a really fascinating look at one strategy. They're not picking a side. They're preparing for all the possible outcomes.
Just look at this data. India has been on an absolute gold buying binge. We're at a point now where the value of their gold holdings has actually surpassed their foreign currency reserves. I mean, that's a massive strategic pivot. It shows you that for its long-term security, India trusts a lump of physical metal more than it trusts holding other countries' currencies. But here's the thing, India isn't just putting all its eggs in the gold basket. At the same time, it's pushing its own currency, the rupee, on the world stage. They've already set up arrangements with 37 other countries, mostly in the global south, to settle trade directly in rupees. It's a classic hedge. India isn't choosing a team, it's building its own options. Okay, let's put it all together. What we've been talking about isn't a story with a single winner. It's really the birth of a new, more complex, and kind of messy multi-layered system. So, here's what the future most likely looks like. You've got a three-layer system. The US dollar stays on top as the main currency for global liquidity and day-to-day commerce. The yuan carves out its own space as a major currency for regional trade, especially in Asia and with its key trading partners. And then you have gold, which is making a comeback as the ultimate neutral insurance policy, a hedge against the risk of the entire system.
The dollar doesn't need to be strong. It only needs to be the least weak. The yuan doesn't need to be global, only regional. And gold doesn't need to replace anything, only to exist. And that leaves us with one last big question to think about. Which one of these do you think is the most fragile? Is it the dollar's dominance? Is it China's ambition? Or is it something much deeper? Maybe it's our collective trust in government-issued money itself. What fails first?
I really hope this breakdown helped make sense of the huge forces shaping our global economy. If you appreciate this kind of clear, data-driven analysis, please consider supporting the channel. The link to buy me a coffee is right there in the description. Thanks so much for watching.